On that same line of estrangement, when Spencer first brought this topic to me, my first mindset was to go into cults.
Okay.
And because a lot of time you hear these stories of my kid got sucked into this cult, whatever, religious or whatever, and now the cult won't allow them to talk to the parents, and now parents are just trying to. How do you? I guess it's a two-part question. What does a cult look for in a child to cultivate them, and how does the parent deal with when the child is lost to try and get them back?
Well, the first part is I think on the humorous side is I feel like a cult member because I like CrossFit, and that's very much its own thing, right? I am Kool-Aid. I am 1,000%. Greg Glassman dosed me with that, and I bought in, right? I believe it, right? So, okay, that's the first part. Second part is as you were sharing, I immediately thought of are you familiar with the Yellow Deli? They have phenomenal sandwiches and soups and delis. There's 12 of them, and it's like a tribal thing, and there's a lot to it. I'm not going to try to rehash what it is. But anyway, if you ever get to stop in one, that's phenomenal food. However, all the people working in the place, whether it's coffee, the restaurant, building stuff, their compound or whatever, are all folks that are part of the cult, right? What my estimation in terms of what people look for is no different than what they're looking for to associate and affiliate with gangs, the military, organizations. They're looking for something that's missing, and then leaders of organizations are masters to identify particular profiles of what fits their particular group or organization, right? And if a good recruiter, whether it's in human resources in a Fortune 500, is looking to bring people into their cult, right? Or we're talking about some sort of nefarious Jim Jones something kind of thing. It's been modeled. There's grooming in there, right, in the unhealthy kind of way, and it's filling a gap or a need. Oftentimes, it will circle back to these, and I think I would be hard-pressed to find anybody to refute this. It's going to go back to those Maslow baseline day one psychology things: safety, security, food, and water.
Wow.
Something is not being provided in that space. That person is generally choosing safety and security over privacy at that point. That is what they've chosen.
Wow.
That's what they've chosen. And all of those organizations I rattled off for you, there's very complex and different reasons people go into them, whether we're on the deviant side of things or on the quote-unquote good side or righteous side or somewhere in the middle. The people that are profiling know exactly who and what they're looking for. It's patterns of speech, thought, and behavior. That person's absent a male model in their life. That person's absent a mother figure. That person didn't have food, safety, security. They didn't know where the next meal. They didn't have a job. They have this going on. Hey, they're a little bit funny looking, and we know it, right? Whatever the thing is, right? But that's how wickedly evil the world is.
Yeah, unbelievable.
That's my estimation, and I'm not a cult expert, but I would tell you is that if somebody's estranged, they're vulnerable to those things. And then you could run down the list of things that come with that, and right here I made notes, right? Religious or cultural things, right? Political polarization, mental illness can be exacerbated, especially after 18. And that's something I thought about in my notes before this call. It's like 18, a young person goes to college, or let's say the military, their first job or whatever. Actually, are you guys okay if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
At 18, what are the first things that come up for many people in Western culture? Based on those examples I gave, what comes up at 18?
What am I going to do?
What am I going to
life?
Right? How am I going to make a living? Where am I going to go? Who do I want to be? How am I going to feed? I got to pay bills now. Well, it's also the first time in many cases people are experiencing significant stress, right? And whatever that might be, right? And at that point, that's where I noted mental illness absolutely can become prevalent. That was totally dormant and absent until 17, 18 years old, because now there's a stressor that reveals, hey, that's schizophrenia or schizoaffective. That's bipolar, right? Because mom and dad aren't there to shield every step of the way anymore, right? The teachers aren't all aware of every detail of every diagnosis you have, so they can't, and now you're kind of roaming there, so something comes up. That opens up to different addictions or substance abuse in many cases, right? Whether they stay in that place or not, very different, but binge drinking is more often than not a college or early military thing, that Western culture, right? And then we get to the abuses. That's where it gets tricky, because there are predators among us that will look for people that are vulnerable and susceptible to that stuff. Back to the Jim Jones and the Kool-Aid and the cults, right? There are people that look for that particular thing. There's also people that have a sense of adventure and spirit that are looking for that experience. So let's not just put it on the cult as being this wickedly evil, devilish thing. There are people that need that in their life for whatever the reason, because they have a sense of identity, a sense of belonging. The thing I wasn't getting when I was 14 in Wyoming or Iowa or Chicago, whatever, right? Well, now it's filled at the Yellow Deli. I get to make sandwiches. I'm always fed. I get to go to a different Yellow Deli once in a while. Don't commit any heinous crimes. And then it all stays within the family, whatever deviant stuff we're doing.
Wow.
And I'm accepting of that stuff. Disability was the other one. So now that student comes home at 18, or that person gets chaptered out of the military because they had an episode and they're like, hey, you're diagnosed with this, this, and this. Now they're back home. Now there's social expectation. My kid didn't finish Harvard. My kid can't even go to community college. My kid can't even finish basic. Well, the reality is you're caught up in the outcomes about what your friends are going to say or see on social media. That kid might be struggling with significant behavioral health or mental illness, and that is a whole nother can of worms because of the things I said before. Somebody starts having delusions around you or hallucinations, like that's hard to be around. Somebody's manic and they're up here, or massive depression the next day, even though things are good, right? That's hard to be around. So now that adult and parent, their relationship has completely changed. And I would say from the place of H-hour counseling and what I do for a living, it's things like that that come up in that critical transition phase between 18 and 25. Everybody wants to have their 18-year-old have a straight line. Hey, I'm going to do this, do that, and then I'm going to go work at Goldman Sachs, or I'm going to go to medical school, or I'm going to start a company and do this, this, and this. And the reality is what I find, teaching undergrad anyway, that's maybe 1 or 2 students out of like 30 I had today. They just know where they're going. They don't need Dr. Ruiz. They're going. They're doing it. Then there's the other like 10% that like just need a little influence and encouragement. The greater majority in the middle trying to figure out all the things you said. Who do I want to be? How do I want to be? Where to be? But if they're dealing with mental illness or behavioral health issues and there's new pressures and things are coming up to the surface, I was never anxious before. All of a sudden now I'm anxious. Hey, I'm thinking things I never thought. Oh, I'm allowed to do things and engage in behaviors with people that I've never been allowed to talk to. Now, that's not common in New Jersey, but in the military, that happens a lot. There's people that never leave their neighborhood, and now all of a sudden they're in the melting pot. That's a sample size of the United States of America, and they're around people that have money, that people that don't have money, and people everybody in between, and that can shock the system, right? So